I'm Carole Williams, the National Drama Advisor for Scottish Community Drama Association. I'm here today with Richard Nisbet, one of the founders of Shakespeare at Traquair. Hello, Richard.
Hello. It's lovely to see you.
It is a beautiful day there in Kelso.
Yes, very beautiful.
So before we go on to talk about your experiences of directing and performing outdoors, Richard, I should be wishing you a happy birthday, 25.
Yes, 25 years. Rather sadly, not able to celebrate it with a production or a performance this year.
No, that's a real shame. But hopefully you're just postponing that and you will get to have some celebrations.
We've just postponed everything, moved it all forward another year. So A Midsummer Night's Dream to be back at the beginning to celebrate the 25th year.
So you're sort of planning in a 3-year cycle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot that goes into planning these huge productions, which will bring me nicely into the first thing I wanted to talk about with you. Just thinking about this as a resource for other SCDA members who might be thinking about doing some kind of outdoor performance. What are the main things that you need to consider in terms of putting your productions on?
Well, I think obviously the venue or where you're doing outdoor is obviously critical, because you'll have the usual things that you would normally do in an indoor theatre, to do with like you still always have to have your licenses, your risk assessments, and copyright, all these things. But the major thing with outdoor is obviously there's going to be the weather. That's and it's whether some people might not want to go ahead with a performance, but we've always said, when people have said, what happens if it's raining? And we say, well, the actors get wet. The audience, it's up to you. Wear sensible clothing. You do it. You can dress up just normal for the bad weather, but we're all in costumes. So we're lucky that we've always got the same venue, and so we kind of understand it. I see there's a lot of people who do outdoor Shakespeare, who are visiting groups, touring groups, and they maybe have it more stationary, like on a stage, and then the audience are seated, or maybe they're still standing, watching it. A bit like Bard and the Botanics obviously comes to mind, because the actual regions, you do have to apply for a performance license, which will obviously tie in with police and with the fire services, a bit of form filling, but that's all a security thing. But it's something that is a part of law. So, but it's one of those that could be easily slipped. So there's that. Then it's the kind of like moving people around and their safety. But you've also got also the safety of your production team, crew, the whole shebang, dressing rooms, makeup areas, and then a big one, obviously, and very much coming up at the moment when we're in lockdown, when they're opening up various places, toilets. Big issue. From a weather point of view, and obviously with us, again, on the things like fire, and it being promenade, if we've got electrics that we're using, and if we've got maybe flaming torches, you have to have the appropriate fire equipment. Now, you can rent them. For our dressing areas, we have 2 massive big marquee tents that we've purchased them. Kind of like you have to think a little bit out the box and try and work it. But it is just like indoor theatre, but it's outdoors. It still has all the basics, are the regulations, like choose your play. If you need to have royalty rights, apply for them, and have your risk assessments, have your disclosure if you're working with children, or disclosure anyway, and all these things. Adhere to the laws and be vigilant about what you're doing. And then away from that is, once you've got your area that you're thinking of, you have to then just consider, well, how are you moving the audience? Are they stationary? And again, just work out what are the logistics. But if you do need public toilets, you can't have people just going in bushes. But working out outdoor, you have to just start thinking how you're going to work it all. And the weather obviously does play a huge part, but you face these when you face them, but always have them at the back of your mind, any possibilities that ever happen. And I think that's all I can really kind of like say as such.
There's no way you could do a production like this without a team of people pulling this together, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that's also, I suppose we've kind of like grown up very much as a family, the production side of it. It's a very much an equal shared. No one's kind of like kingpin. Like they might kind of look at me because of having founded it and things like that. But and I'm always there. But I'm not one of these people. I let go. I let people have their responsibility. I'm there maybe as a manager and an administrator, but I don't have this as everything that this is my baby and I'm going to be over controlling, because you just can't be. You have to give. It's the same as when you're directing. You always have to give your actors a bit of space as well. You can't control everything. And everybody has to collaborate. That's the only times that when things work is when people collaborate and have an equal respect and discussion. We always make sure that we obviously have first aid kits, and we have first aid kit with front of house and all of that for emergencies. It's always available. We sometimes use walkie-talkies. They're always there, but we don't really use them unless it's totally an emergency, because we're obviously in quite different areas of the grounds. The other thing is that we do always have a large supply of these rain ponchos that we don't charge people for them. We just give them away if they need them and they want them, and they'll maybe return them. They'll maybe take up a new pack and then return it at the end. They'll even maybe return the one that they've used. And also another thing is that I'd forgotten about, of course, with trickware. I think you've experienced it. Is midges. The famous Scottish midge. So there's a lot of we carry sprays around. I have to say, over the years, audiences have got more equipped. People now are seriously coming along with balking boots, and they're a lot better equipped. Umbrellas are always a bit of a problem. Umbrellas can block out your sight, but of course with our productions it's promenade. So really, in the theory of promenade is, well, the audience just go to where they can see and hear. And we'll probably come on to talking about voice, because obviously voice is, people have to think bigger when they're performing outdoors.
Well, that was a very nice segue into my next thing to talk about, which is really about the skills of the actors, the performers. Would you say they are substantially different to performing inside a theatre?
I think they get a greater experience which develops their voices in a totally different way. We are non-reliant on any kind of amplification like radio mics, any kind of like miking up. So they're having to use their own voice. And I always just tell people, regardless, anytime, just if you can't hear them, I just say, think bigger. Let the brain do the work. And hopefully, like, obviously training is great. If you're, like, I was a choir boy, so I've always breathed in that kind of like lower breath. But just telling people, breathe deeply, relax, but think big. And it's amazing how the voice does the brain, will let it become big. Articulation, of course, diction is helpful. And that's where training obviously is helpful. And we do little workshops and a little bit of warm-ups before we do the shows, just the old typical ones, and all that, and get the mouth working. Everybody has to really muck in And that comes to things like even just clearing up at night. The toilets at the end of the night, it's usually a group of maybe 2 or 3 of us, usually including myself, who muck them out at the end of the night, ready for the next day's business of Traquair. The outdoor experience, it just gives you everything. And it also, the intimacy that you have with the audience, especially with Promenade. I don't know if you don't really get that if you're seated. But I guess there's probably a kind of musicians when they're playing the Usher Hall, they don't probably, like say the Rolling Stones, when they play the Usher Hall, they probably don't have nearly the kind of feel of in a way, the intimacy of playing Glastonbury, although it's far, far bigger. But that kind of like huddle of people right at you and working in the kind of like that, the different conditions. It's so rounded until you've done it. And I'm sure there's loads of things that I'm missing out. But have you done outdoor performances?
I've done a little bit of it, yes, when I was studying.
Yeah. And it is a great discipline.
It is. I think when we were talking about the actor skills, I think that is one of those things, the ability to not exactly improvise, because you're not doing an improvised piece of performance. You know, you've got a play, you've rehearsed it, it's got a text, but you do have to be able to react and respond to things that come to you from the audience. But that's also, I agree with you, it's a joy. But I think you can't let yourself be thrown by that.
Yeah, you have to relax. That's very important, is relaxation. Don't get worried about your lines. If you lose lines, then you lose lines. We have continuity people.
Yeah.
So great experiences you can get with the outdoor theatre.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, and none of us know at the moment, but they're talking about in the current situation, as we're gradually coming out of lockdown, they've been saying for some time that it's safer to be outside than it is inside.
Mm-hmm.
This moment, there isn't really any clear indication for the kind of support that's going to happen for theatres, theatre buildings. A lot of the major theatres have announced that they don't expect to open until at least spring next year. So my question to you is, well, there's probably 2 parts to this. Firstly, do you think that outdoor theatre like yourself are more likely to be up and running before indoor theatre? And the second part of my question is, do you think you're likely to have to make many adaptations to what you're currently doing to be safe, I suppose, within the current environment we're in?
Yes, it's very interesting. Such a huge debate. Outdoor, there is a lot of, you could see that with reduced numbers, outdoor seated, you can maybe control an audience, but you're maybe dropping quite a number. I can't see how you could do that promenade, because promenading it adds time. When it comes to the actual performance, what's it going to be? Like, you can't do Romeo and Juliet without a kiss. It's just there's so much intimacy in our drama, but you can do a lot of individual things. And I was interested that they've just been doing they've just done a new also a completely 2 new. Alan Bennett had written 2 new talking heads, so you can do and there's monologues, and you could do up poetry evenings. Said about these kind of like ghost walks, like the one in Edinburgh, I remember was just 2 people, or you could call it a storytelling. So you can possibly do certain things, but they're going to be small numbers. And again, it seems terrible me harping on about toilets, but it is a big issue at the moment, because they're like, we're supposed to be washing our hands, so you have to use taps and everything. There's hygiene that comes into that anyway. I don't know what the answers to this is. People have talked about drive-in theatre.
They have drive-in cinema, and I know that's likely to be more popular this year. But it'd be interesting with drive-in theatre. I think I could imagine how they could do it on a professional level, because they might have all the tech, but they could do that. But for community groups, I can't see how that would work, unless you have huge. How do you organise the sound? I'm sure there'll be some of our members who are kind of sound and lighting people who could get very excited about finding a way to make it work. But yes, at the moment, I think there are huge barriers to understanding how it will get back. And I suppose
it's also that thing about tickets as well, because like you don't want just gate crashers. You still want to know that, you know, on the fairness of the people who have paid their money, that there's not going to be people sneaking in. So you've still got to kind of like the old ticket stub, and then the actual the choice of drama. Like when I think over the years of watching One Act Play Festival, like who doesn't touch? Who doesn't like? I suppose you get your way around some things, but props, and people are sharing props, and like, are we all having to do self-tests? You know, get testing as we come into the dressing rooms, and then it only takes one of us to be ill, and that's it. It's all cancelled anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm talking a bit doom and gloom here, I feel.
No, that's okay. I think these are all things. I think there's the obvious things that people think about with theatre and the challenges to get it going again. But then, like you say, every time you start thinking about it, there's another thing and there's another thing. And certainly some of the issues that community groups will experience is different to professional theatres. Ticketing is one thing particularly, and card payments and things like this. You know, small group would not have the facilities to do that, certainly not on the door, so you remain contactless. Yeah, I think there's so much. It was one of the things that prompted me to want to talk to you, Richard, because I was concerned that one of the things that's being said is, you know, well, we'll move more theatre outside and that will resolve the issues. But as you and I have just uncovered in talking, that's not going to happen. It's not so simple as just saying, let's move out of the building and then we'll be safe.
And I think we've talked about how I would always encourage people to think about doing stuff outdoors. And I'm sure that a lot of groups could also maybe come together to do these kind of like things, and do collaborations if they're not too far away from each other. But there's stately homes, there's loads of gardens. And it's just think out the box and just, but it's a great experience and people should be thinking outdoors. But at the same time, we've got a lot of really important little theatres all over the country who are possibly facing closure at the moment. And we need to support them. And it's probably community drama association societies who are actually a lot of the time feeding them to stay open. And they're a remarkable resource.
What is the best thing about performing outdoors?
Fresh air, the openness, performing in that huge, huge space. You don't actually really need an awful lot of scenery. And then if you're lucky enough to do it in promenade style, where you really are seriously can be nose to nose with your audience, it is hugely intimate and just a beautiful, beautiful experience. But yeah, outdoors, it's outdoors. It's big and it's beautiful. And everybody
I love that.
We should all be going outdoors anyway. We're all supposed to be doing walking more and things.
I'm going to stop that there. I'm going to think of outdoors being big and beautiful. That's going to be my strapline for outdoor performance. Thank you so much, Richard.